This morning, we are going to have some conversations around the topic of Sabbath and rest. And partially because we are aware this is something that both George and myself need, but also as we've had conversations with many of you, this seems like a topic that continues to come up again and again.
It's something with rest in your life and balance that you feel maybe for a week or two you've hit a good rhythm and then something changes, and it's this constant adjustment in our life to try to experience not just rest in the body but rest in the spirit, and to be able to breathe, take care of ourselves. There's a video a few years ago I saw. It was by a woman named Reverend Barbara Brown Taylor. She was a chapel speaker maybe 8 years ago. And she was asked the question, kind of what Sabbath means to her. It was just an interviewer who asked her an off-the-cuff question. And the video, I've played it so many times in my life, and I've shared it with people, and I want to share that with you this morning as a way to kind of set up our conversation. So would you give her your attention? So there's a few things that she speaks about there that have kind of leapt out to me over the years, and just as we're thinking about that this morning, one of them is this notion of productivity. That productivity is, you can go ahead and put that slide up for me, this notion of that when we rest there's a decline in productivity, and a lot of times we feel guilty about that because we buy into this notion that what we produce is what says we're valuable and worth something. And so she speaks about a decline in productivity as part of the kind of rest that God invites us into. She used the phrase, quit being good for anything except your creatureliness. She talked about pleasure. I'd never associated that with Sabbath and rest, but things that bring us pleasure, that are good for our soul. She speaks about, for her, it's good food and good company. She uses the phrase, giving up all the things that keep you, it's not supposed to say prior, but propped. You can change that for me. I typed that on my cell phone. Giving up all the things that keep you propped up the rest of the week. You know what? Kind of giving those up is painful. And so she phrases it as like a practice in death. It's to give it up. It's hard. She speaks about the hammock and the rest that's in Sabbath, but she says at the end, there's also part of Sabbath and part of what we're speaking about today is the looking into the night sky, the quiet moments, and saying, why am I here? Why am I here? What's the point and direction of my life?
So last week, George came into my office to chat about something, and in this moment of just kind of catching up, I said, the margins of my life feel way too thin.
And I said, indeed they do.
In his life, not in mine. He was not like saying, you're right.
I've noticed that, Melanie. They do
Thank
look
you.
very thin.
That is actually accurate. But, we realize we're at different places, different stage in our life than you are. We have full-time jobs and spouses and a bunch of children.
Yep, our kids go to school together just over there on the road.
So we know that that's different, but we also feel like it's an important thing to mention that this is constant conversation for us, things we're working on.
It was a struggle for us in college to find those places of rest, and it doesn't change this looking for it and evaluating your life and the thinness of the margins.
Yeah, sorry, I interrupted you.
No.
I just said reassessing all the time. That's all I was saying.
And so as we kind of looked at it today, but knowing that we're in a different place, I love some of the language of practice in death. I think about mortality quite a lot, but I think you kind of phrased it as the notion of, talk to me about that.
Yeah. George likes the language in this video a little more than I do. That's fine. That's why he introduced it and I didn't. But I think the way that I think about this a lot of times is, that anytime I say yes to something, I'm saying no to something else. And so in that, I can lean into the practice of death a little bit there. But I also love to think of it that anytime I'm saying no to something, I have the opportunity to say yes to something else. And so I try to think about that in my own life. What are the things I can say yes to? I deeply believe that God wants for us life to the full. And sometimes that means saying no to a number of things, and sometimes it means saying yes to a number of things as well.
So this is kind of where we landed today, both really in unison, saying, yeah, no to something is a yes to something else, and a yes to something is a no to something else. And we thought we'd invite a few of your peers to come up that we've had various conversations with about how they're trying to enter into that themselves. So would you welcome with us?
Thank you for joining us. We're just going to jump right in, and really would love for you to share with us again around that notion of there are things sometimes we have to say no to so that we can say yes to something else. Maybe as you've shared those practices with us, if you'll share them with everybody, and even kind of how you got to the place where you realized, something's got to change, something's got to give here.
I'll go. My name's Ryan, by the way. So I became conscious a long time ago that there was just stuff that crowded my life, like we all did. But I think I'm also conscious of the fact that when I say yes and no to things, rest is also something I have to say yes to. Like, not just saying no to something so that I can not do something, but saying yes to the frame of mind that allows me to rest. And so when I have to say yes to a frame of mind, I have to do some psychological upkeep. And some of those things that were crowding my space, some of the addictions I'd given into, were things like the internet being in my pocket all day long and trying to tell me who I am. Things like watching TV, like in high school I got home, went to dinner one time, and I realized that the only thing I did after practice that day was watch TV. So I was like, okay, there's got to be some stuff that I have to get out of the way before I can even say yes to rest. And some of those things were cut out television 5 years ago, and then it wasn't enough, so I cut out social media. Then it wasn't enough, so I got rid of my phone, and then my flip phone got stolen when I was in Mexico. Funny story. Who steals a flip phone? So I said no to that even. But even then, it was saying yes to rest. I could cut out all kinds of stuff. It didn't do anything unless I made the conscious decision that I was going to come into this in a different frame of mind.
Gabby, when we were talking, maybe give us a little snapshot of the fullness of life. A lot of good things, but what that was. Take us back a little bit to where you began realizing some of the things you might need to say no to.
So I realized this whole process of like giving your best yes and saying no to things a lot last year when I was a sophomore. I was an RA, I led a life group, I was discipling girls, I had schoolwork and friends and just trying to juggle and balance a lot of things, and they're all good things that I love to do, but in my one-on-one conversations with my RD last year, I just realized like I would just come to him, and as we were processing through the weeks and stuff, sometimes I would just be in tears like, oh my goodness, I'm so exhausted. And I realized it's because I was just spreading myself so thin and saying yes to good things, but because I was saying yes to so many things, I wasn't able to give my best self and be fully present with those who I was saying yes to.
So you talked about making some hard decisions. What did some of that look like, and what maybe were some of the things you encountered as you made those?
So going into this next year, I realized that in order to give my best yes to the people around me, I had to step down from ministry. So that meant saying no to leading a life group and discipling girls, and it was really hard. I felt like I was going to disappoint the people around me, especially since a lot of my friends and close people who just I love in my community come from my church that I go to. And so I felt like by stepping down, I felt like I was like almost backing out of community. But as I had conversations with the people mentoring me and my friends who were also in leadership, and coming to them with like, I actually have been praying through this and processing through this and realizing like I can't take this position. I entered into just a lot of grace-filled conversations where people are just like, no, Gabby, like, this is what the Lord's called you to, and like, we support you in that, and like, you aren't letting us down, and you're not a disappointment, and you're actually doing what's good for yourself.
Are there any yes people in here that just like say yes to everything? It's a few of us, yeah.
That's like the catch-22 of being in college, right? Like the whole world is telling us that our capital, what we can do with our lives is say yes to things. And I would get to like conversations with my family and stuff at the end of the day. I was a double major. There's only 2 of the last 7 semesters that I took less than 18 units. I have 3 on-campus jobs. I have a family in town, girlfriends, friends, like whatever. Like that's like, I was doing it. And I would get home and my family would be like, oh, you're so busy. That's awesome. Like I remember when I was in college, what a life. Yeah, wow. And I'd be like, why aren't you guys crying with me? Like I'm toast. And not only that, but like, I'm getting to the point where I have insomnia because I can't stop thinking about all the stuff I have to do all day.
Yeah.
Why
And part
is
of that,
anybody
Ryan, is
flipping out?
you were saying it's in some ways people that, they're proud of you. You know, these people
like,
around
why-
you are
how
kind
could you possibly be proud of me? And that's like, it was like I kept getting filled. Like I was like, okay, I got it. Tomorrow I got it. Tomorrow I got it. And I got to the end of 4.5 years of saying tomorrow I got it, and I burnt out.
I think, part of I know that even with my own little tiny kids, that place of going, gosh, it's so great to see them doing so many things. And so it's a phrase that came, we had someone come to our campus a few years ago called John Ortberg, and he used a phrase that said, if you're going to follow Jesus, you have to be willing to disappoint people. It really struck me and stuck with me, because it's hard to, did you encounter some of that, Gabby? I mean, and you were saying what did that kind of feel like for you as you said the no's to things?
I realized like last year, this beginning of this year, in saying no to those leadership positions, I had a huge, felt in my own self that, oh my goodness, I'm letting people down around me. Like I feel like my other leaders are doing just as much as I am, but they're still doing it. Like why can't I like keep up with everyone? But I think, as I was saying before, it was just in those conversations with people who I knew and trusted and loved, and where they're like, no, Gabby, like you are thinking this through. You are taking a step back to give other things your best yes, and like, that you are going to be, you're functioning from a place of rest instead of just spreading yourself so thin. So,
Kelly, talk to us a bit about your journey. Yeah.
So I didn't really do Sabbath growing up, and I really started doing it last year when a friend of mine mentioned that he did Sabbath on Saturdays, and I thought that was really cool because I know that it's something that we're called to, and yet I had never really practiced it. And so I started it, but I didn't really start in a place of where I was thinking about what I was actually doing and what I actually had to practice in order to be restful. And so I began by saying that I wasn't going to do homework on Saturdays, but I have come to realize that that was never even close to enough because I was doing things that simply weren't restful for me. I would be on my phone, and I'd be like watching Netflix or doing other things that were also draining and would still leave me exhausted and tired at the end of the day. And so just this past Saturday, I said no to social media. I said no to Netflix. And instead, I intentionally spent time with God, and I read my Bible, and I spent time in prayer. And I spent time reading books, all things that are really, really life-giving. And I realized that it was one of the most restful days that I've had, all year. So,
in the midst of experiencing rest there, does it now feel easy to spend your time that way, or is it still a struggle? I mean, I guess for all of you, do you feel drawn back into those patterns?
Oh, yeah. And I mean, can we just take a moment to recognize that Kelly just dropped the gauntlet? That's but being drawn back into those habits is such a real thing. And I would go through rhythms in my life where I was looking back at a week and saying, gosh, I can't do this again next week. But then I would look back on a week that was a very similar schedule and say, man, that was awesome. I could do this again and again and again. And I had a conversation with a buddy last summer during summer school, and we were talking about how we just try and manage our time. Sorry, Mom, I didn't tell you I was talking in chapel. This is my mom. She's from down the street. Oh, she's so mad. But so you get back into that. You get sucked back into that rhythm so easily. And the way to stay out of it is to recognize that the disciplines of your life, the things that you have committed to doing, are because of Jesus. Like, why have you committed? And if the things that you have committed to aren't because of Jesus, stop doing them. Seriously, stop doing them. And that, when the weeks I was like, I'm getting out of bed, I'm getting dressed, I'm eating this food, I'm talking to these people, I'm doing this class, I'm doing this church, because of Jesus, those are the weeks where I could do it again. Those are the weeks where I wanted to do it again forever. But if the noise of your life is your phone telling you to do something differently, or your Snapchat reminding you that there's someone doing something cooler, or Netflix reminding you that there's always better art to go look at, holy cow, you're never going to get there. Like, you got to figure out how to make your life for Jesus. And you got to take out some noise for that. I had to take out some noise. I'm saying you a lot, but the you is me in this story.
I lean in to the conversation around life-giving, and Kelly, you mentioned that you had this really deeply restful Saturday. I think probably because you were carving out some of the things that Ryan was just talking about. But what does life-giving look like for you? You mentioned reading, Kelly. Are there other things that like feel deeply restful and life-giving for you? And then I'd love to hear from the others of you, because we're all different.
Yeah. I was thinking more about this, just even over the last few months, I've realized that one spiritual discipline that is extremely hard for me is reading the Bible. And I've realized that that's because I haven't intentionally spent time doing that, because I've done it when I have leftover time, when I'm not doing homework or when I'm not doing other things. But it's something that I can intentionally do if I actually spend time on a Saturday morning and say, no, I'm not going to do anything else but spend time praying and reading my Bible. And that has been really life-giving.
Gabby, what about you? What are some of the things that bring you life?
Over the last couple of years, I think there's a couple of things that I've realized that really bring me a lot of life and joy. And for me, I think that's taking those moments of stepping back and being able to reflect. And as she was saying, those moments of like the who are we or why are we here? And those moments of just being able to sit with my journal, and if I'm like outside, like on the cliffs, and just really pausing and taking the time to be like, okay, God, like, where am I at? Like, what's going on in my life? And like, how do I take a pause to step back and be mindful of like the things that He's doing in my life and the things that I'm going through and how I'm feeling? Just journaling has been really life-giving for me. But other than that, I think for me, it's been painting and doing art. Just taking the time to create, and that's been a little hard at times because my art has kind of turned into a job. So then separating like, okay, what are the times where I'm doing this to work, and then what are the times that I'm like creating something new and creating something in a way that I feel rested afterwards. And I think being intentional about setting that in my schedule and putting that and like not and letting it be solidified in my schedule has been definitely life-giving for me.
Mel, what does that look like for you? What things do you feel are important for you to say yes to for the life of your soul?
The ocean is a super important one for me. I'm deeply relational, and so also really important for me is time with good friends. And George knows I will take a day off and drive to Orange County to have lunch with someone who just brings me like great sort of peace and truth in my life.
It's that good food and good company.
Yes.
Yeah, good for the soul.
That's the way that I'm wired. And you?
I think one of the things I find myself doing a lot is, and I did this when I was a student here at Point Loma, although I did it on a motorcycle then, and I have to do it in a car because my wife won't let me have a motorcycle. That's another story. I drive to the lighthouse quite a bit. Even though it's only 10 minutes out there, it just feels like I'm going into a different world. And there's a memory association for me there. So it's both restful and it's a bit of the looking into the night sky and asking God, why am I here? What am I doing? So I have a little pass for the end of for the national park, and I just go there and have a couple of favorite spots to go. Sometimes just sometimes I just drive there and back. Other times I hang for an hour or so. But yeah, finding that place. And sometimes I'm driving to something on campus, and I drive right past Lomaland Drive just in the spur of the moment, and it feels really good to be like, I'm going to say no to that. And sometimes it's never been a meeting with you, Mary, just for the record. But just to say, I'm not going to be dragged around by my schedule all the time. Sometimes I'm okay to disappoint people, not ruthlessly or harshly, but to say I need some space right now. It feels good. So,
I think one of the things that is so incredibly important is knowing yourselves, knowing ourselves, paying attention. And as much as we are talking about the actual practice of a day of rest, like Kelly was referring to, I do believe there's sort of a posture of Sabbath and a way, Ryan and Gabby both spoke about that at some point, that there's this place of being able to carry within you the peace and the rest. And I am really practical, like with myself. And so I have these tools that I find helpful. And when I am like short with my kids or snuff at George in a meeting, which happens sometimes. When I get to these places where I go like, who was that? Like, what just happened? Then I've got to pay attention. And so there's this acronym HALT. Do you know this? Asking yourself, am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Am I tired? Y'all, a lot of times the answer is yes to all of those.
I always keep a little trail mix bar in my pocket in meetings so I can give Mel a snack when she snaps at me.
It's like a Snickers commercial.
I expect that. I want that now. Okay, a moment of serious for a second, because this is like hard for me to say, but I'm going to say it. Yeah. Last week, I rear-ended somebody. The first time I've ever gotten in an accident in my whole life. And it was horrible. I did like pretty significant damage to my car. We were rolling out of a stop light, and the person, a couple cars in front, slammed on the brakes. And I had reached over to make sure that I'd packed my lunch because I was so hungry. And so tired. Look, this is the truth. So I'm sitting there shaking, like exchanging insurance with the person. And I had this realization. I was like, I have got to pay better attention to my life. Because now I have a rental car, I have like a deductible to pay, all kinds of like stress, because I wasn't paying enough attention and making sure that I wasn't hungry and tired and all these things. So to wrap up, we asked Dr. Joey Sagawa to speak to us a little bit about rest and what that physical, like being tired, what that does to us. So we asked him, why and how should we rest?
Well, I'm Dr. Joey Sagawa. I am an associate professor in the Department of Psychology. So the big question, why rest? For me, the bigger question is, why don't we rest? Why do we have such a hard time taking care of ourselves in the way that we should? I think that one reason for this stems from our desire to do good, to make a difference. What's more important? Me taking care of someone in need or me getting a good night's sleep? For me, it's taking care of someone in need. But I can only do that for so long. There's only so much of me that I can give. And eventually I have to acknowledge my limitations. I can't do it all. I don't know it all. I need help. At the end of the day, I'm not God. And I'm not expected to be. And for me, that is the beauty of the gospel. Pretty simple. Pursue Jesus to the best of my ability, follow his example, knowing that I am not him, I will not be him, but I'm going to try to be like him as best as I can. So that question, why rest? I think it's because we have to. I have no other choice. We're created as limited human beings with real frailties, with real consequences if we push far beyond our limitations. Let's take an example. Say someone who's not getting good sleep, okay? Going to sleep at different times, having a hard time waking up. As a counselor, what do we expect to see? A variety of symptoms of sleep deprivation. Irritability, nervousness, difficulty with concentration, and fatigue. And what if that person pushes it further? Okay? They stay up all night studying for that very important exam. What happens then? Exhaustion. Why? Because the brain's depleted. And do you know how long it takes to recover from an all-nighter? 2 weeks. It takes your brain 2 weeks to recover from an all-nighter. And that's because it's needing to replenish all of those important neurotransmitters that got depleted while you missed your night's sleep. So again, coming back to the question, why rest? Because we have to. We have no other choice. I think the other question was, how do we rest? And I think that one's up to every individual person. It looks different for everybody. Everybody does rest differently. Everybody does Sabbath differently. I think the important thing is making an attempt to do it and knowing that it's a process and you're never going to do it perfectly. For me, that was the first step of just trying to get good sleep. And that's something I've been doing for several years now. I go to sleep at the same time. I wake up at the same time. Try to get that 8 to 9 hours that we're needing. And for me, it started when I was in graduate school because I had a professor challenge me and say, hey, I think you need more sleep. I think you need to get 8 to 9 hours a night. And at that time, I thought that getting sleep into my schedule was impossible. But he said, just try it. And I did. I've been doing it for, I think, about 10 years now. And so if I was going to push that challenge forward, I'd challenge any of you out there to try to get a good night's sleep. Start with 1 and see if you can get more and keep doing it. You might just like it.
So we think about being rooted in love this year. The call is to love God with all your heart and soul and mind and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. So would you learn the practices of taking good care of yourself as a child of God? And let me bless you this morning with these words from Numbers. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and be gracious unto you. Would you receive today the peace of Christ in your life that passes all understanding, and be at rest as a beloved child of God? Have a wonderful day as you look to the Lord. You're dismissed.